Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. Well, I mean, I actually come to this debate and this, it's a debate, it's a fait accompli with the deal done clearly by those sitting at the end of the chamber, as someone who has been a member of the AAT. And I think that's one of the few people in here that can probably say that I actually know the AAT. I had a brief stint there, and for those of you that played along at home during all of the constitutional crisis, it's actually because of the ruling impacting me that when Fiona Nash left the Senate and I was the next on the ticket and should have entered the Senate, I took that went to the High Court, and the High Court ruled that the election had never ended, and therefore I was I held an office of profit under the Crown at the tribunal, so was therefore ineligible to enter the Senate. So I have very first-hand experience of the AAT and the work it does, and I can proudly say I worked in the migration area. Not one of the decisions that I made, not one of the outcomes of the cases that I sat on and adjudicated over was appealed. And that's actually one of the KPIs for the AAT, is that there are that the appeals of the decisions made by members, that we're not seeing excessive numbers of them, and the decisions are made on sound and solid ground. So I can proudly say I didn't have any appeals on mine. But I do, just in light of this, want to make mention of someone else. I'm not sure if he's still at the tribunal. He very well may be, but he was appointed by the then Attorney-General George Brandis at the same time as me, and he was a lovely man, and I actually sat with him at the dinner we had to welcome new members to the tribunal when we were going through tribunal school, and that was a man called Mark Bishop. Now, Mark was a Labor senator and had then been appointed to the tribunal by the Liberal Attorney-General George Brandis, because Mark did have, as a former senator, a number of skills that would provide value, and I'm sure he has provided value to the Administrative Appeals Tribunal. But the difference is that we see, and I know from Senator Davies' contribution when she actually looked at the Discrimination Act and how it behaves in the public service as well, and what's actually discriminatory behaviour. And apparently, the current Attorney-General might need to update himself on that, because it is actually a form of discrimination to penalise someone based on political affiliation. So what we're seeing here, with a cosy deal done with the Greens, otherwise the day after budget we wouldn't be seeing a change of hours for them to just ram through $1 billion worth of spending on an administrative tribunal, which is actually not changing it. It's a rebrand. It's a rebrand so that they can restructure and move out everyone that they didn't appoint outside the 160 Labor-affiliated appointments that this government has made since coming to office, so that they can effectively discriminate against anybody who does not have card-carrying membership of the Labor Party. And maybe the Greens want a couple of their own in. Maybe that's part of their deal. But it is the most disgusting and disgraceful abuse of power, but I have to say, not shocked, which is disappointing, because we have come to expect in record time from this government nothing less than complete hypocritical behaviour, a lack of transparency, and now we add a good, healthy dose of nepotism. But I will talk a little bit more about the specifics for those playing along at home about what the difference is going to look like, what we're going to be spending $1 billion in a rebrand is going to look like. I mean, it's got to be the fastest time a government delivers a budget and then doesn't want to talk about it. Like, we are literally not even 24 hours since the budget, and they've got an urgency, quick, we can pass this ledge about the Administrative Appeals Tribunal. Like, I mean, I've seen the headlines evolve through the day, and this budget has gone down like a lead balloon. Australians can see it for the stinker that it is. They know it's going to absolutely make their lives harder. They know that this rubbish they've gone on with every household, well, I don't know for those who haven't caught up with question time in the House of Representatives today, but a fantastic question by the Leader of Business for the Opposition the member for Bradfield today when he asked whether or not, in a hypothetical question, whereas someone who had to move, let's say, from Bellevue Hill to Parramatta for work, who owned a substantial number of properties, including just say a $12 million beach house at Palm Beach, whether or not of those 5 properties they would receive $300 per household. So there is actually in the Daily Telegraph a list of how many homes all members of this place and the other place own. And so, you know, fair question. Per household, well, if you've owned a couple of households, are you getting it a couple of times? But coming back, this is $1 billion on a rebrand. So I thought I'd just have a look. Some of the things that we could spend $1 billion on, rather than a new logo, business cards and letterhead, and I'm assuming some redundancy payments for anyone who's ever been affiliated to the Liberal Party. But you know, we won't say the Greens here because their level of hypocrisy will, I want to say that if they didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any at all. But, you know, when we think about infrastructure and infrastructure development, think about, you know, we have Senator Orman Payne, who is very passionate about public schools and schooling and education. Just think about how many public schools could be refurbished or hospitals updated in underserved areas. Look at the ageing water and sewage systems, how much public health and sanitation could be improved. Rail connections, maybe even, I don't know, a road from the new airport in Western Sydney might be part of that equation. Some EV charging points. Just think how many, Senator O'Sullivan, EV charging stations could be put across this land. And you know what? They could even put some good cappuccino makers there so you could make yourself a coffee while your car charges for 3.5 hours. So that would be, you know, $1 billion. But, you know, seriously, we could establish new community health centres in rural and remote areas. We could invest in medical research, develop treatments for diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia. We could expand mental health. We know we had a tokenistic mention of mental health in the budget last night, while this country is consumed by a mental health crisis made worse by Labor's homegrown inflation cost of living crisis. But we get a tokenistic app being developed for mental health. Just think what $1 billion could do for mental health, and especially at the moderate and severe end of mental illness. We could have new technology going into every classroom across the country and enhance digital learning for students, particularly those in rural and remote areas, those that struggle with connection at the moment. We could update those sorts of systems for them. We could fund scholarships for low-income families to go to university or to go to vocational training. We could help Indigenous, rural and regional children attend boarding schools that would provide them with a security of housing, of food, of education, and really set them on a path to a better life. Look at what we could do in adult education. We have more migrants in this country than ever before, but imagine the programs we could put in place to actually help them learn English, to help them understand Australian culture. We hear a lot about the homelessness and affordable housing and how people are struggling to get into homes. What could $1 billion do? How many houses could $1 billion build? How many houses? What could we build there for $1 billion? How many low-interest loans could we offer to first-time home buyers to help them break into the housing market with $1 billion? And, you know, these guys are all about energy efficiency. They love that. They love all this. Zero emissions. Let's, you know, we've got to get everyone having all their 5 stars on their appliances. We could improve energy efficiency in many, many homes, particularly in lower socioeconomic areas, so the need for them to run their heaters full-time in winter, or the fact that they wouldn't require that volume of air conditioning because their houses may be insulated properly. But no, we're not looking at that. We're looking at a rebrand. Look at environmental conservatism. Think about the ecosystems that could benefit from some reforestation programs. You know what? We could even invest in working through communities more effectively with the transmission lines that everyone's so determined to bulldoze through those communities. We could look at how we use plastics better. We could look at recycling. What are those sorts of issues that we could better? You know, these are the things that we hear the Greens talk about. But when it comes to $1 billion for a rebrand, forget the recycling, forget the environment. We don't want any energy efficiency program in any of these, you know, lower socioeconomic groups. We don't want to work on any job creation programs. Imagine spending $1 billion. Rural and regional areas, Indigenous communities, training them up. How much could $1 billion do there? Oh, God, a dam. How good would a dam be?
2 dams.
Water security. I mean, we could, you know, stop the flooding in the Hawkesbury every 3.5 minutes. Remember when Tim Flannery told us it was never going to rain again? Tell that to the people of the Hawkesbury who have been flooded out multiple times over the past couple of months. It's awesome. Awesome. You know, social welfare programs. I thought that was all your bailiwick, but clearly it's not, because you're prepared to put $1 billion on new business cards rather than looking at food assistance programs in a cost of living crisis that could actually help families that are struggling. Put breakfast in schools for lower socioeconomic areas where kids don't come to school with an empty tummy. Make sure there's lunches in schools. You know, I sponsor kids through the Smith family, just, try and help, because I always said, you know, the programs where you sponsor a kid in Africa, I always thought if there's somewhere you could help homegrown, help at home. I got a nice letter from the child that I am currently sponsoring. I've had a few as they've graduated school, and I get nice letters telling me where they've gone off to. One's learning to be a mechanic, and I get a letter about what the money that I give has helped contribute to buying uniforms, has helped contribute to buy school books. $1 billion. School books. $1 billion worth of school books, $1 billion worth of uniforms could have been provided to struggling families and their children. But no, don't worry. We'll make sure we get both window-faced and plain envelopes ready to go, all with the new logo and proper font on them. You know, disaster relief. All those things, it's the end of the world, because climate change, there's actually never going to be a positive about climate change. When you actually think about more carbon, more water, it's pretty good for the forests of Australia. It's pretty lush and green out there at the moment. But, we're going to have all these disasters, apparently. We could have had $1 billion ready to go in a disaster relief fund. Crime prevention. Indigenous communities, rural and regional communities are being ravaged, particularly by youth crime. We've had a stabbing in Dubbo again last weekend. $1 billion on youth crime initiatives. Soft on crime, no national security. Just let in anyone, willy-nilly. Boats are back. Christmas Island's coming back. We know this level of incompetence is breathtaking, but it is being aided and abetted by those on the crossbench who claim and profess to be about social justice. We're all about the welfare for the lowest socioeconomic groups, those struggling, those doing it tough. We care about koalas and whales. We worry about the environment. No, you don't. You worry about whatever cosy deal you can get from the Labor Party, and then you'll be in here crying tomorrow because, oh my God, they want to use gas. Like, seriously, get some consistency, people. Like, have some values on something and actually stand by them rather than capitulating for $1 billion. Because you know what we've got at the moment? We've got an Administrative Appeals Tribunal that reviews government decisions. And after this, we're going to have an Administrative Appeals Tribunal, but now called the ART, not the AAT, but we're going to have a tribunal that reviews government decisions. So at the moment, Australians can apply at the AAT to have the merits of a decision reviewed. After this legislation, they get to apply at a higher cost, mind you, to the ART. They ART. So, the one big difference, though, is at the moment we have a tribunal that has people appointed who've had experience across a different range of areas, different range of issues. Instead, what we're going to have with the ART is a completely Labor apparatchik stacked tribunal. The unions, they didn't get the promotion through the right executive of the union body. They didn't become a senator. We know that's the clear pathway if you're in the Labor Party. But it will be all Labor apparatchiks. It'll put an ideological bent on decisions that should be being made impartially, that should be being made at a distance as they review government decision. But no. Here we go again, ram it through thanks to the Greens.